My name is Alex van der Baan. I'm here today with Glen Christensen, one of my old colleagues, and today we're talking together about the corporate use of Mikrotik, and we also have a specific use case, which is the fixed building network that we have in the World Trade Center in Amsterdam, which is managed by the company I used to work for, NDI. And basically, we'd like to show that a lot of the questions, a lot of the conversations we have here in the Netherlands is when you speak about Mikrotik, is it's cheap, it doesn't work. You should go with Cisco. I'm not sure if I can say the C brand. So actually, what we want to do today is a bit twofold. We want to show what you can do with the Mikrotik product and how you can implement it in your company, and also show you a bit of the use cases and the lessons learned from basically operating the network in the World Trade Center for over 10 years. So this is the agenda for today. We will do a quick introduction. We will actually give you a bit more information on the use case of the World Trade Center in Amsterdam, which is a commercial multi-tenant property of over 125 square meters. It's actually the biggest multi-tenant real estate that is actually in the Netherlands until date. And Glen will actually talk a bit more about what's happened on the technical side. I used to be responsible for the whole project management, so I will be talking a bit more about what happens when you actually migrate away from Cisco to Mikrotik, and how does the project work when you have to migrate over 300 clients and connections with everything that comes about. So my name is Alex van der Baan. I used to work with NDI for almost 10 years. I used to be responsible for the service desk and the service management. Afterwards, I did project management for over 4 years. One of my primary tasks over there was actually to set up places, real estate such as the World Trade Center, to make sure that there was a fixed network available, and actually from there on build the client base further. I have a business background. Actually, I was playing around with Mikrotik, started 7 years ago, and I started proper ICT in the beginning of this year, and I started it to help owners of real estate to set up IT networks in commercial real estate. What we see is in many corporate environments there are people available to manage electricity, to manage the climate, but there's not really a fixed provider for IT, and that's what proper ICT aims to be for them. And the other service that we offer is actually to manage service providers that are servicing, quite a lot of customers, to show them how you can actually move away from Cisco, Zyl, whatever, and actually to set your core network on Mikrotik, and also to use your customer equipment fully on Mikrotik.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, everyone. My name is Glen Christensen. I'm network lead with NDI. I've been working with Mikrotik only since 2015, but we really fell in love with it. NDI, we're a ICT provider. We provide a broad ranges of services, server and desktop support, VoIP and internet connectivity, remote office, online backup, etc. Besides that, we have a directing role in 17 multi-tenant commercial office buildings in which we provide internet, IPTV, VoIP services, fully managed. We have 3 corporate offices in Amsterdam, The Hague and Rotterdam. We have 75 employees, and we service over more than 500 clients. I've got to check with my boss sitting over there, but I think that's about right. So that's who I am, and that's what we do.
So yes, Mom in the Netherlands. We're very excited to have the first mom here today. I think over the last few years, every now and then when I actually was visiting IT summits, sometimes I met people saying, I also use Mikrotik. But it's really good to see so many people and to already been talking to so many people today that are actually using Mikrotik already for quite some time. And I think this is really, now is the time to gain momentum, to actually to start working with this product, with this platform, and actually to push further. What we see in the market now is that people are actually, particularly in the Netherlands, we're seeing increased use of bandwidth. We're seeing increased use of glass fiber connections, and particularly on that use. Once you move to 200 megabit symmetrical connections, other vendors, they seem to have a bit more tougher time, because there's a lot of computing power necessary. With a lot of the vendors, there's also licensing fees and structures in place. And actually, when you compare that to the Mikrotik product and platform, as we already heard this morning, there's a very competitive product range, and there's definitely a very competitive pricing strategy available. So particularly in the managed service provider segment, the smaller IT companies, everybody's actually gearing towards Mikrotik at the moment. And that's also what Proper ICT is helping clients with, to see how we can actually train those IT and networking teams to implement Mikrotik a lot faster. So yeah, what we hear is definitely as an ambassador of the Mikrotik platform, and we definitely hope to grow awareness and the market share in the Netherlands. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, I think it's also good for everybody here in the room when we speak to other IT enthusiasts to really tell them that it's not just a product that you just use somewhere in private or for geek people, that it's also definitely a product that you can use successfully and profitably in a commercial sector. So, towards the use case that we will be discussing today. As I mentioned before, the World Trade Center here in Amsterdam, very close by, the financial district in Amsterdam. 130 square meters, seven towers. It's growing at the moment. There are 500 plus tenants in the building. It's a very international client base, from international companies with their financial headquarters to bigger financial players, to banks. And basically, over the last 2 years, NDI has moved away from a Cisco backbone all the way to a fully Mikrotik backbone. And because we thought it was nice not just move our backbone away, we said we are also going to move our carrier. We're going to migrate our carrier. So we had actually a migration plan for our backbone, and we also had roughly 3 to 4/24 IP blocks with clients that we had to migrate away. As you can imagine, when you have roughly 300 connections, all international clients, there was a lot of coordinating in place to make sure that all the VPN connections, all the whatever, were still working. So that was that was a nice, interesting project. Glenn will tell you a little bit more about how the legacy backbone actually looked like and how we moved further to Mikrotik.
Right, so just to give you a simplified view of the legacy backbone, as we call it, starting with the internet connection, border routers, core route and edge switch. Eventually we get into the customer's office, and up to this point we used a switch as demarcation point, which could be a bit confusing, because basically what we would do, if a client would have their internet service running with us, we'll place a router there, attach the internet VLAN to the router, and then untag it back to the switch where the client PCs would be connected. A bit strange setup. VoIP, IPTV services are directly serviced by a VLAN, which is untagged on the switch, which kind of limits us in troubleshooting clients' needs. For instance, if a client calls us to say, our internet connection is slow, what's going on? This switch doesn't really give us a lot of information, not at all actually. So that's one of the things which we aim to improve by moving to the new Mikrotik backbone. Another thing was we use, on the old platform, we used routed subnets, which of course there's a lot of waste of IP space. So we wanted to improve that as well by using /32 addressing, which I'll come to in a bit later. And besides that, we didn't have any redundancy on the internet on the internet gateway as well. So that was like another major thing we wanted to improve. So the design goals, as I mentioned before, we wanted to have a clear demarcation. So both the client and ourselves, we know where the responsibility stops and where it starts. We wanted to get the better insight in bandwidth consumption per the client's request. We wanted to see it on the CP itself, but we also wanted to see, if the client asked for it, on the client devices on the inside of their network. Yes, using /32 addressing, which enables us to preserve a lot of IP space and also allows us to flexibly assign additional IP addresses for clients. So instead of giving them a new block, which necessitates for them the need to reconfigure the routers, etc., we just say, okay, you want an extra IP address? Here you go, that's it. And you can keep your gateway settings and all your other settings intact. Yeah, and of course, we provide a variety of services on the backbone. We wanted to have a quick and easy way to say, okay, you want IPTV? Bam, there you are. You want VoIP? We enable it for you and you're ready to go. And another thing, which is quite interesting, we wanted to have flexible traffic shaping. As you can imagine nowadays, with iOS updates or smart devices downloading updates all the time, Windows updates, you want to reserve traffic, or you want to limit traffic specifically to these kind of servers if the client asks for it, instead of these services flooding the internet connection. So these were our main goals. And then we started looking around to which platform supported these needs. I'm sure you can tell us more about that.
So when we were looking at the new platform, obviously we were also looking at other vendors. We had experience for a number of years with Cisco. It served as well within the design that we were actually that we provisioned. But it was important for us to look, okay, how can this actually grow with us? We were, of course, we knew that there was an explosive growth in bandwidth, a lot of new additional users actually in the various networks of the clients. So we felt it was important, particularly that we have a very strong and robust routing feature set. And actually that combines with very flexible VLAN configurations, very flexible VPN configurations. Also the fact that all the VPN connectivity between the vendors was actually also very well handled. So that was definitely a big checkpoint. There was a turnkey monitoring solution, obviously, with the torch feature that I think most of you will actually, one of the first feature, I think most people, when they never played around with the RouterOS platform, and you show them what you can see in your interface list, when you see what you can actually see in torch, that can actually already be within a minute that people say, wow, I really want to play around more with the box and with the software, because it really gives me huge advantages. So that was definitely a big plus. And also, we really wanted to have one chain from the core network all the way through the edge switches and all the way to the CPs. And even though during the two and a half years project, particularly on the switch side, we definitely had some of our issues with the CRS product line, I have to say now it really gives us a lot of stability and it gives us a lot of insight on the whole network. And then actually a year ago, we saw the Roman features, which is a big advantage when you're talking about managing, let's say, a network which is on-premise, one object where you have, let's say, a few hundred clients. Then actually working with management VLANs and working with Roman is a big advantage. So that's definitely something that we can suggest to people looking at these type of setups. So yeah, definitely for us, Mikrotik was obviously the choice.
So this is a simplified view of what our new Backbone 2.0 looks like. Just to give you a lowdown on which equipment we use. For the border routers, we use CCR 1036 series. We have BGP failover for internet, for VoIP, and even for our SIP gateway. IPTV was quite a challenge since Mikrotik switches don't support IGMP snooping, especially since we moved over to HD IPTV. You can imagine if you don't have IGMP snooping, you get like 60 to 80 megabits of IPTV multicast stream over the entire network, which we managed to work around for now by using the IGMP proxy built into Router OS, subdividing it in VLANs, just to limit the multicast streams until Router OS supports IGMP snooping until that time. In the core, we use CCR 1016 with the interconnect cable. And then we run fiber cables from the core router to each tower, so the A, B, all the way up to the H tower. What we do is, obviously, there's 24 ports in the CCR 226, and we use more than 24 ports. So for secondary switches, we don't interconnect them, but we run a direct fiber as well to the core. So each switch in the tower has a direct fiber connection to the core. And of course, we provide public IP addresses to 2 PPPoE servers running on the core router. We have one VLAN for NAT-enabled devices, which we call the managed devices, and we have a PPPoE server for bridge mode clients. So, what does it look like in the new situation? Keeping the old picture in mind, which I showed you previously. This remains the same. Up until the client, technically it's the same kind of backbone. Running Mikrotik, obviously, but that's nothing has changed in that. What changes is that we actually use a CPE now, finally, as a demarcation point. So we bring in the VLAN trunk, which carries all the services. And then from the CPE, an RB450, which we've branded with this lovely casing. So from the CPE, we untag on the specific Ethernet port the services which we provide to our customer. So if you only have internet, you get an untagged VLAN to your internet switch. And either the switch is provided by NDI, if we manage your internet connection. If we don't manage your internet connection, you plug in your firewall directly into the CPE and you take care of your own stuff from there on. The same goes for VoIP. We have the VoIP is always managed by NDI. So we untag VoIP VLAN to manage the POO switch, which unfortunately is still Cisco based. And the same goes for IPTV. So we stop here, and whichever service you need gets its own separate switch managed by us, and to which you connect your own devices. So how did we move on with the migration? Because obviously you can imagine having the old backbone still running, having a new backbone in place, but needing to move the clients from the old to the new backbone. We have to first decide on what type of CPE do we provide to our customers. And like I said, we have 2 types. The managed CPE, which provides DHCP, network address translation, firewalling, etc. And we provide a bridge mode CPE, which is basically bring your own device. You plug in your own firewall, and you're ready to go. And since, like Alex said, there's like almost 500 clients which use our services in the World Trade Center, you have to make a decision on which clients to move first. And each configuration comes with its own challenges, let's put it that way. We decided to migrate our managed clients first because we control the entire chain. But bridge mode clients are easier to set up. The CPE only needs to pass through the data. There's no configuration which needs to be done. But the challenge at that end, and maybe Alex can tell us more about that in a minute. The challenge in bridge mode client is you need to, you're going to be in touch with external external IT providers, which you need to work with to make sure that their settings on their firewall match the CPE. A lot of work actually gets involved in the bridge mode migrations. So to give you an idea of our basic, to give you an idea of our basic setup of the CPE. We have the VLAN trunk coming in with VLAN interfaces for each service which we provide, plus a VLAN for our management. And whichever service is needed by that customer gets enabled. So basically, this client only has internet. If we would have VoIP, we would enable the VoIP port, enable the VoIP VLAN, and you'll be ready to go.
Yeah, so a few statistics about the migration, because as we mentioned before, it was a backbone migration, but obviously also we had our wholesale carrier. We were moving away from carrier number A to B, and obviously that made us changing all the public IP addresses. That had to made us liaise with a lot of different IT providers. We found that particularly Japanese are they're very reluctant to move away from whatever IT equipment, either that be Windows 2000 server or their public IP address. So we really had to take quite some time to start communicating to clients that we're moving away. The fortunate and the good thing was that keeping the price point similar, we managed to tell clients that obviously, the bandwidth would stay the same, but there would be a carrier redundancy in place within the network. So if one of the carriers would actually go down, actually the other one would take over. And particularly with all the work happening in the financial district in Amsterdam at the moment, that was a very big plus for a lot of clients that they were actually, okay, we are redundant within the network. So we started beginning of January, and 2015. And in a few days, it will be a very nice D-Day. We will actually plug out the old connection, and then we'll see if everything continues to work as we expect. I think that will be the case. But I'm sure that a lot of people will actually be on call between the last day and the 1st of December. So basically, we migrated 250 clients. Some clients, they have more than one connection. We had over 300 CPEs that we had to swap over. We had some people painting these every time one came back. And obviously, we had a lot of CRS devices, the switches, the edge switches, which we put into place. And for the core, we use a wide range of the cloud core router devices. So yeah, the challenges. There were a few. Obviously, in the beginning, since we came from a routed subnet, a lot of our clients were actually very accustomed to their routed subnets. A lot of the network guys, they can dream how the /30s and the /29s work. But obviously, as we mentioned before, we wanted to move away also from a routed subnet to a PoE managed system, also to have non-consecutive IP addresses to be given out. So actually now we can actually give out IP address 10 and 200. That actually boggles the mind of a lot of network guys, because they don't understand it anymore, because they say, okay, but we have to, what's my subnet? Yeah, it's /24, whatever. However, what we notice, obviously, if you have this issue when you have IP addresses moving from different subnets, you can do /24. You can put it on your own firewall in a bridge mode. It doesn't really matter for the rest of the network, because obviously when we give out PoE sessions, you can only route those specific IP addresses. But what happens when you have two clients in a World Trade Center? They both have a mail server. They both have two IP addresses. They both have /24 configured in their firewall. Then you can actually look for a very long time until you notice why that email doesn't actually show up to the other mail server. Because that email never leaves the firewall, because obviously it says, well, I'm routing it to my own firewall. Doesn't really matter. But it's not there, actually, it's one of the clients. So we had to play around a little bit more to keep in mind, to see, okay, how do we actually allocate those IP addresses? Unfortunately, IP6, even though we're talking about it for such a long time, it's not really as mature yet as we hope it to be. So we still have to move with those routed subnets and all the limitations that it brings us in IP4. But that was definitely one of the things that really, made us scratch the backs of our heads. What's happening here? And it takes a while before you can actually bug fix that issue, particularly because sometimes they don't really tell you that they put your IP address in /24. We provide IP sheets to our clients, and if clients decide to put a /24, so that something never really moves out, that's a really tough thing to find out. So that was one of the challenges that we had. Obviously, a lot of site surveying. You have to make sure when you do these type of migrations that you really know what's happening in the network of your client. And then always the question, when does our responsibility stop? And when does the client take over? Particularly when you're working with very, you can say stubborn, or you can say knowledgeable network teams. The communication is sometimes a bit difficult, particularly when you're talking about time zone differences. So definitely communicating and making sure that all your documentation is in place. That's definitely something that we've learned. And I think we're now into the 15th iteration of our documentation to clients to really make sure that they know what they can expect. Yes, and it's very interesting. Obviously, one of the things that Mikrotik supports very well is the point-to-point addressing, /32 addressing, where you can actually put an IP address in the subnet zone, where you can actually route from IP to IP. That's definitely not something that, for instance, Cisco devices can actually do. So also, you really have to make sure that you know what other vendors are in place with the network to really make sure how you design the IP scheme for your clients. If you don't do that, you can actually also come into quite some hassle. So making sure that you know what other vendors are in place at the client level really give you a big advantage.
Especially Cisco,
particularly the C brand, definitely. And the other thing was, how do you configure your CPE? Even though it's just a demarcation point in bridge mode or in managed mode, obviously you do a lot more. It's quite important to continue to look how you configure your CPE, and also to make sure that you keep them well configured. Yes.
So picking up where Alex left us, configuration of the CPEs and keeping them up to date obviously was a big thing. With each iteration, we left old versions behind, because at a certain point it doesn't make sense to go back to every CPE individually and manually update into the right config settings or the updated config settings. So one of the improvements which we put in place recently is a mass updating CPE script, which we found on the Mikrotik wiki. We'll put the link in the online presentation. That helped us a lot. Finally able to just push specific settings to all CPEs. Another interesting one was we have a dark fiber connection to our data center where we provide remote office services to our clients. The compatible devices list on the Mikrotik website showed one SFP module which supported distances larger than 20 kilometers. It was quite a hunt to track that SFP module down. We found it in the end, somewhere on an online store in Hong Kong. So therefore we managed to get a direct link to the data center without using the internet breakout of the World Trade Center. Having the dark fiber connectivity to the data center also enabled us to provide an extra service to our clients which use the remote office service. Instead of them going through their internet connection to the data center, we can now offer them an internal path to the data center. That way, keeping your remote office traffic separated from your internet traffic, which should improve latency and security as well. Like Alex said, we really love Torch. We fell in love with that the moment we started using Mikrotik. But obviously, Torch only provides an ad hoc view at what kind of traffic is going through the CPE. So this year we moved over to PRTG monitoring, which allows us to give us historical views of traffic flows, and also to proactively check how things are running over there. We've moved Roman management over a separate VLAN due to VLAN isolation on the CRS switches. And we have a separate management VLAN as well for managing the CPEs. So basically we have 3 ways to manage a CPE. Either accessing it on the public IP address of the PPPoE interface. We can use Roman, or we can use a layer 3 IP address from within the World Trade Center to take over the CPE.
So now that we have the full attention of all the Mikrotik community, we'd like to take also the opportunity to give a little bit of a wish list. There is still, unfortunately, some small limitations in the software. We hear that Router OS 7 is going to bring us relief. We're hoping to see it very soon. But definitely, as I mentioned before in my presentation, there were a lot of limitations in the switch. Particularly people that actually come to use with the Router OS facilities, when they start looking at how the switching solution work in the switch, in the CRS switches, it takes some time. You really have to really take a grip of it a little bit more to really understand how that works. So that could actually have some improvement. STP functionality, that's not actually built in the driver yet. And of course IGMP snooping, which is very important in all the audio-visual solutions that we see more and more happening in the marketplace. So this is definitely, and particularly something that a lot of the cheaper switches are supporting. So we really hope to see that very soon. Also, as mentioned before, the only Cisco that we still have to bear in our network is the PoE switches. Because there's simply not enough capacity. We've seen some PoE products that just announced, but there are actually only a few ports, not PoE plus. So if you would like to support IP telephony systems, that's definitely not enough. So we really hope to see a lot more of the PoE compatible switches, and also more ports. Everybody is trying to figure out to cramp everything in their use in their racks. So it would really help to see a bit more condensed switches to come available. And also CCR devices with more SFP plus gauges that can actually have a bit more throughput. Because now, particularly looking back at the picture before, when you're pushing all that data to your core network, it would really help to have 10 gig bandwidths available. So we hope to see that in the future as well. So we'd like to thank you for your attention. As Glenn mentioned, when we post the all the documentation, we will actually also include it with a lot of the scripts and all the other things that we actually gathered over the years. We'd like to thank also a lot of the people some of the people here today that actually helped in the network team from NDI. Robert Kruid here, who actually the guy that started Mikrotik at NDI, who gave us this nice pass. So Robert, thank you very much. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Kan ik het even in het Nederlands doen? De vraag is, zou het budgetverschil geweest zijn als jullie het met C-brand hadden uitgerust?
The question was the difference in budget. I think it would have been many thousands of euros, 3 or 4 at least. Yes, yeah, definitely. Just hardware. I think perhaps Robert, you can still remember that. So the Catalyst switch that we used before, I think it was in the thousands of euro, right? The one we had. Yeah. So it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. More questions?
The rebranding of the CPE, why was that done?
That was done because there's a big difference in the technical awareness of our clients, and particularly if you have sometimes you have a very well-maintained rack. Usually you don't have a well-maintained rack. Everybody knows the pictures of the spaghettis. So it really helps us if you have this box and you tell the client, find the orange box. Step number 1. So that helps. We have the number of the service desk there. So when people are stressing out, find the orange box, find the number, call us. So then we have people available. The second thing that we did is actually to match the service with a patch cable. So internet is blue, IP telephony is green, IPTV is yellow. So if IP telephony doesn't work, find the yellow cable. So that's the reason. Yeah. And the other thing is, this actually its case, it weighs a bit more. People in the Netherlands, when they have the Mikrotik equipment in their hand, they think it's perhaps not heavy enough. So what's that Mikrotik stuff? So now, it's branded, it's white labeled, so, it provides us a bit less discussion. I think there was another question over there.
How do you manage high availability in your core and backbone network with Mikrotik?
Glenn, I think you're the guy to speak about that.
Well, as far as the switches go, we don't really have hardware failover. Mikrotik doesn't offer that yet. So we have a semi-hot spare, let's call it lukewarm spare, available. As far as routing goes, we're eventually going to use VRRP, but it's not. There's no hardware high availability, obviously. So you have to work it out in the protocols itself. VRRP, for instance. Obviously, we have the failover of the internet connection itself taken care of by our carrier. So that's where it ends almost. Yeah, definitely. Didn't we have it on the wish list? Oh, okay, well. Right. Anyone else? Questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.